What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the SectTek Podcast. It is so good to be back with you guys, and as always, Kenn Williamson is here with me, and we have an amazing guest, CEO or founder of SectTek, Sequoyah Technologies, Haines. Hank, it's so good to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Good.
I don't know that it's going to be amazing, but we'll have a good discussion.
Well, I think it's going to be amazing.
So before we dive into it, though, I kind of want to hear a little bit about what's going on in Matt's world. We've missed you. I've missed you here on the podcast. It's been a little lonely without you. But you just recently had a baby, and you're living your best dad life. What's that like? How you been doing with it?
It's been fantastic. I'm loving dad life. It's been great. Listen, I mean, dad, it really does feel like you're like the backup quarterback, like I'm not in the game a lot, especially early on, but, every now and then, you give a bottle, you change some diapers, you walk around the house, any contribution feels like a lot. So easy wins, but no, it's been amazing to be a dad. It's been awesome. Man, he's already growing. I mean, it's just crazy, but I've absolutely loved it. And it was so ironic because you were joking with me all day about a month ago that I would get a call anytime to have the baby. And lo and behold, we get done with the podcast, we go and eat lunch. I'm leaving the parking lot and I get the call that my wife's in labor.
That's what you told me, and I thought that was absolutely hilarious because it is something where it's just like at any moment it can happen.
Yeah, and
that's what I've been saying, and then right after the podcast it happened. So that's so great, and I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. Thanks, man. So, well, I guess we should get into it. I'm really excited about our guest too. I've worked with Hank for 6 years now, and it's been amazing. He's a really great boss, very gifted developer, gifted businessman,
great father in his own right.
That's true too. Three kids.
3 kids. Yeah.
And
so
I
would tell you to enjoy it. It goes by screaming fast.
It's already feeling fast, guys. Yeah. Like I looked at him today and I was like, he's like double the size. Like how is this happening? It's crazy.
Yeah, and you're almost an empty nester now, right? You have one.
I am an empty nester.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah.
My youngest is 22.
Oh wow.
She's already gone.
Oh man. So what is that stage like? Is it?
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
actually.
I'm at the beginning. You're kind of, at the midpoint. It's not really the end, but the midpoint of.
You don't feel like you have a lot to do right now. That will change.
Yeah. Good.
Then it'll get like unbearable.
Yeah.
And they leave. So so it all works out.
Perfect.
Oh man.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And Hank, founder of Sequoyah, Sequoyah Technologies, SectTech. You've been in software for a really long time. How did you get started in software?
So I got started. I read an article about Steve Jobs when I was very young, and I still remember going into my father. He was sitting there. He had just gotten back from work, and I said, "Dad, I figured out what I wanted to do." Because originally I wanted to be a forest ranger, but I figured out what I wanted to do. I wanted to create the stuff that runs on the hardware. That's all I told him, right? And so that was in 1980.
Wow.
And it just so happened he went to work, and my dad was a great horse trader. It didn't matter what he had, he could trade it up for something else. And he came home and he said, "Hey, there's a guy at work." He worked at Universal Tire Plant. He was the head of maintenance. "There's a guy at work has just bought a computer, one of these new things he read about, and he can't make it work.
Huh.
You want it?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty good." Well, I had just bought a Winchester 3030 for deer season. And he said, "Well, I think he wants a rifle. So if you'll trade that rifle, I think you get the computer." And I was like, "Whoa, I just bought that 3030. I really like it, So it took me a day, but I told him that next morning. I said, "Yeah, I'll do the trade." So I gave him the rifle. He came back with a computer, and I'm not kidding. I don't think I slept for a month.
Wow.
I was on the thing writing code. There were magazines you used to be able to buy that had code in them, and you could just fat finger all the code in there and then just see what it did. And that's how I started. And so by the time I had left high school, I had started enrolling in the local college classes to learn development. And I'll tell you, I went to Murray State College. This is kind of years down the road. I had tried to play baseball and basketball for 1 year. That kind of took me away from it. But I came back and I went to the local community college. And there was a guy there named, I still remember his name, Hayden Matthews. Hayden Matthews was my professor there, and I'll bet he taught me more about the proper way to develop code, understand the problems. That's where he spent a lot of time with us defining the problem first, and then from there, building software. Hayden Matthews actually went on to start a software development company in Durant.
Oh, wow.
And started doing a lot of development in North Texas and southern Oklahoma. So he was a really sharp guy, and he just made a big difference. It's interesting how you can, you go to MIT, it's going to be a lot better.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that, but sometimes you can just run across a path of a dude that just really understands what he's doing and knows how to lay it out, and you just learn a lot, and that's what happened to me. So,
That's
and then
awesome.
so from there, I went to Oklahoma State and was going to start at the computer science program, and actually met a girl at a bar that was working for the state of Oklahoma, and she told me, "Hey, we need a developer." And so I was in Stillwater for like 2 days, and I got a software development job with the state of Oklahoma.
So you don't. So
I
you're
don't
there
have a
2
degree.
days. You haven't even started class.
I hadn't even started class yet.
Wow.
And I went to Oklahoma State with a computer science associate's degree.
Yeah.
And I got a development job. So then I worked for the state, and I wrote software for the Oklahoma Bid Assistance Program. People can sign up, and then we used to take all this content from World Banks and different things. And so I wrote just a ton of code that did indexing and lookups, and then we would print out reports for small businesses all over the state of Oklahoma. And then another program I wrote was one for grades and attendance at VOTEC schools. So that was kind of how that was where I learned kind of the mechanics of how to create production code, because once we had 55 VOTECs, once we delivered the code, we didn't have the internet back then. So I would build all the software and put it on floppy disks, put it in an envelope, and send it out. And they had to be able to install it, and it had to work.
Can't send a patch.
Can't send a patch.
Yeah. Can't be like, oh man, I found a bug 2 weeks later.
Right. It was.
There's no GitHub just to
right.
update there.
It was one and done.
So you mentioned the internet, and it's my understanding from what you've told me before that the internet was figured heavily into the beginning of SectTech.
Yeah.
And so if we fast forward a little bit, would you like to talk a little bit about how SectTech came to be, and what you were doing at the time, and talk a little bit about the founding of SectTech?
Yeah. So I had one thing led to another, and I actually got a job here in Tulsa with a consulting company called SimCase International. What SimCase did is they sold about three different ERP packages, and ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. And so we did a lot of work with manufacturing companies, and this enterprise software, what it does is handles everything from order taking to part build to vendor relationship. I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
Nuts and bolts, A to Z of a manufacturing company. Well, so that I was the head of division. We had about 13 people in the division of that company, and what we did was we did all the hardware installs, the networking, the database, and the software adjustments. So we would do integrations to other software products. So that's what we did there. Well, at the same time, my brother and I, on the side, we had started a internet service provider in Bartlesville. So we were one of the first internet service providers. This was the mid 90s.
Wow.
And so the whole idea of SectTech was basically to, if you think about enterprise software, it's so large and it's so expensive, but it's not exactly what every manufacturing company needs. It's nearly everything. But with the kind of companies we were working with, we were in the $1 to $3 billion range is where we were. So that tells you that these guys were really successful. But they're usually not multinationals. They don't get to set their own rules. And so what had happened is these guys had figured out something that made them unique in their marketplace. It was also usually something that made it to where they didn't quite fit the ERP model. There was usually something. So there was always like a 10 to 20% of their business that didn't exactly fit the ERP model.
And that was their selling point.
That was their selling point. That was their uniqueness. It either made them really valuable to their customers, or it made it to where they were able to deliver a product at a cheaper price, or whatever it may be. Well, normally what would happen is you would go into a company like that, and the ERP system would basically govern that they needed to change. Okay, well, now all of a sudden they look like everybody else. Most of the time, these small businesses knew better, and they would go, no, you're changing. Okay, well, that's even worse, because now all of a sudden you've changed a common piece of software that is really expensive to maintain, and even if it worked perfectly, 18 months later, they're going to come up with a new version that they couldn't go to. So now they're stuck. So SectTech had a pretty simple idea. What we wanted to do is we wanted to take that 15 to 20%, and we wanted to write software that attached to it, that integrated with it.
Gotcha.
And we wanted to use the internet as the delivery mechanism so that additional software was easy to publish. If you remember my concept, we had to deliver software in floppy disks, right? And it was a one and done. What the internet was amazing for me. I was like, holy cow, this is awesome. I could actually make a change, publish it, and everybody that is using the software could see it. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to deliver this software through the browser. So we came up with a tagline. It was a real simple one, and we use it today, and it was moving back office data forward. And we do that for our customers, suppliers, shareholders, and employees. And in that software, when we delivered that, we could actually provide these small little pieces that made, that implement their uniqueness without them having to change their ERP software. Yeah. And it was a great win-win. And so we started in August of 99. And within a year, we had well over 20 people, and we were in Houston and Salt Lake City and Austin. And so, I mean, it was the right tagline at the right time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really capitalized on the internet. And you mentioned that you guys started a side hustle as an internet service provider. Just for everybody watching, this is old school, where they had a legitimate phone bank that you called into, and you got with your 14K or your 56K modem, whatever, right. And the dial up. So
and we got hammered.
Yeah,
I mean we not only did we get hammered with phone calls, but we got beat in that business like a drum.
Yeah.
There is a guy in Tulsa that won in Oklahoma. Okay. This is back in the old days. Kind of a side story, but it's actually important for marketing. It's really important. It taught me something. So nobody knew what the internet was. Right? Nobody knew what it was. I mean, so this dude started an ISP. He called the phone company and listed his business as the internet.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. So in the white pages, it shows Hank Haines and Kenn Williamson and Matt Lemke and the internet.
Well, that's what I want. So I better call
I
that.
better call the
Well,
internet.
just call the internet
I
and get it, right?
Oh, and he
Wow.
won. He won big time.
That's-
So what we did is we changed. That was actually turned out pretty good for us. We changed our model to help people get on the internet. So we sold a high cost dial up. That the ratio. So the whole idea of internet service providers, it was a ratio. It was like 10-1, 10 subscribers to 1 modem. We made it 3-1 so that small business owners could always have an available line. Their odds went way up, and so that's how we got started. Well, in that process, we started writing. We, being my brother and I, we started actually integrating and helping people get their businesses on the internet. We helped Mark Roberts Motors get on the internet. Mark Roberts, who's no longer, he sold his Bartlesville business, but at one time he had one of the biggest Dodge Honda dealerships.
Wow.
I'll tell you how early he was. He bought the domain names for Dodge.com,
Oh, that's so smart.
Honda.com, right? He had to give them back. Obviously, they wouldn't allow that, but that's how early it was in the process. And when we got done, he would sell every car on his lot by like day 20, and he was having people show up all over the country. They would fly in, go get his car, and drive back because he was the way he was selling it. He was doing something called Invoice Plus or something. And what we did is we scanned every invoice of every car so they could see exactly what he was getting charged for the car, and then he would just add to it.
Ah, gotcha. So you had that kind of transparent pricing
Yeah,
model.
transparent pricing.
See it
they
right
could
there
see
online,
it.
and
Yeah.
so smart.
So, yeah.
So 99. You said in about a year you're in all these different cities, and this is a big time just for technology, right? I mean, I was just listening to the founder of JavaScript. He was talking about being at Netscape and writing JavaScript, and this just kind of being a barrier of entry to get in onto the browser, or to get businesses onto the internet. All these tech companies are popping up, and then come early 2000s, mid 2000s, there's a little bit of a dip, and then technology just keeps changing, right? I mean, all of a sudden JavaScript comes in and WordPress, and I mean, the internet just kind of evolved. How did SectTech in the last 24, 25 years evolve with the changes of the internet? I mean, what was that whole process like?
Well, the .com bust was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty soon after.
Right,
Pretty soon.
After you guys got started and we're all over the country and writing code for everyone, and then we had this big tech crack up. What was that like?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible. Luckily, we had great relationships with our customers, and so we actually stuck around for a couple years after the .com bust. But all came crashing down at, I believe it was 1 March. We were notified, I think it was 4 of our contracts all canceled in the same month.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a tough time. I tell you, we laid off about 20 people. So it was pretty rough. So how, it was a big deal in my life as well.
Yeah.
I had wrapped my identity up in the company, and I really had to come to grips with that. That's actually when I got saved, because of that time. God spoke to me particularly. I mean, we already told you the story. I was 14 at the time when I absolutely knew what I wanted to do.
Right.
That's pretty young.
That's rare.
That's
a really rare thing for.
Yeah, I thought it was odd. My kids didn't know by the time they were 14. So she's like, most people don't do that.
Right.
But anyway, Lord used that whole time to draw me to Him. So that was really good, even though it was really terrible.
Really tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And but anyway, so what do? We are always looking to figure out what technology can help make companies productive. Think about what we've talked about from the very beginning is we've always been very interested in how can technology be used to implement a company's business model in a faster, cheaper way. I mean, we want to move faster. We want to move cheaper. We want to make better quality products. All of these things software is great at, because software, the kind of software we write is not the kind of software that's magical.
Yeah.
Right? There are some that you might make the argument, oh, that seems magical, right? We're not doing that. But what we are doing is we're making it to where what 1,000 people can do, we can do with one computer, right? I mean, we're talking unbelievable scale of what our software can do. If there's a process that if you do that process the exact same way, and with that process, we create great products, we can codify that in code, and we can make sure it happens every single time. That's the value of software, right? We had a company who had a lot of distribution facilities with a lot of salesmen. What do? The further you get away from your headquarters, the less control over you have message, less control you have process. Well, all of a sudden we created a process with message, and now all of a sudden they could scale and they could implement the same message to their customers, deliver the same product, get everything brought in so that all of the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. All of these types of things are the types of things software is great at. This is what we're interested in. Now, there's some things that have happened over time. There are 3 big productivity gains in my lifetime. Like, we're talking exponential. Mm-hmm. The first one is the personal computer. Personal computer, absolute game changer. The second one was the internet. And the third one is AI and ML.
Yeah.
This will be the next internet type boom in productivity, because it solves so many problems. With the internet, you could see it. I mean, I saw it the first time I saw it. We were at SimCase International, and the reason I called my brother and we started internet service providers because somebody came in and he connected up his computer to the internet and then just started using a Mozilla. It wasn't a Mozilla, it was a
Mosaic.
Yeah. A Mosaic browser. And he started pulling up graphics and everything else. And
wow.
He left, and I went in my office. I called Mike. As you guys know my relationship with Mike, so we do everything together. And I called Mike. I go, hey, I just saw the internet. We got to get on the internet.
Wow.
So you could just see it because it was creating connected relationships so naturally. And of course, looking back now, we all get it.
Yeah.
Right? But we actually had a 5x7 notebook, had like 4 pages in it, and we would take it with us to meetings, and we'd hand it to CEOs, CFOs, and we'd tell them, this is the internet. This is why it matters to you,
Wow.
We had people telling us it was going to be a fad. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah.
They were wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you hit on so many different points. Some of the things that I heard you say that I think are really important, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying about how SectTech got started and how it's continuing, but that is that you have a lot of these big, heavy ERP, CMS, all of these types of systems, but you as a business person or someone as a business person has something that makes them unique, that they provide unique value, or they have a particular process that doesn't fit into there. And that is something that Matt and I have talked with other guests, which is that software needs to mold to your process, your business process, and not you as a business mold your process to match with the software. And I think that's something that SectTech really excels at, is giving businesses that that ability to show their customers what makes them unique and add value, but at the same time get those productivity gains in the software. So I just think that was totally such a great point. But then go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to share a quick story, because with that, we actually we've seen that recently in a project that I'm working on. As I talked to the stakeholders, we essentially just made some reports a lot more efficient. These are reports that they've got to run every day. these reports, they're out in a warehouse, a steel, a warehouse, they're making a bunch of stuff. And they told me that, these reports used to take 45 minutes to open. Just by us, making these reports more efficient, he told me that they've almost gone up 10 to 15% in their efficiency at the plant because they don't have to wait on these reports to load. So just a small example, but this is productivity gains of a very big company of 10 to 15% of what they're moving. I mean, that's serious dollars,
Oh, yeah.
So it's amazing to see.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
And I would tell you that, as you guys know, I mean, we have just buku stories like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure other companies do as well, but we're not here talking about other companies.
Sorry, I cut your question off there, Ken. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of codify that because it's amazing.
No, and I think that's a great example of exactly what I was talking about. But the other thing, well, there's a few.
I will say,
Go ahead, Haines, sorry.
What I love, you guys are here talking about SectTech. One of the things I love about SectTech is we have a group of people that are all intentional on this same idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we should take that for granted. It's not always that consulting companies, technical consulting companies, aren't more interested in the technology than they are in the business.
Yeah.
So
And
true.
I will tell you that's one of the things I love about SectTech. We've got a great culture. I mean, to a person, we're always asking, but is this actually solving the business problem?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are we doing this just because we like code, or are we doing this to actually solve a problem?
Yeah.
And increase productivity. So
No,
it's
I
a
think
great
that-
thing.
I think it's exactly right. So I have a few questions, but one that's really important to me, and you kind of mentioned it in passing, but it's one of the things that I love the most about working at SectTech, and that is you mentioned after the tech .com bust, the tech crack up, that you really had to reevaluate your life and your identity, and you gave your life to Jesus. And something that you've mentioned in company meetings and throughout is that really you gave the business to Jesus, and that it was important to you to stop thinking of yourself as this is mine and start thinking of it as I'm a steward for the Lord, and that I need to do that. And so I was hoping if you want to just expound a little bit on that, and because it is something that's carried forward to this day. It's something that we bring up in our company meetings and company culture, and it's just something that I respect so much about you, because it's very easy for people, especially in 2024, to try to minimize that, and to maybe it makes some people uncomfortable or whatever reason. But if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, the reality was at that time, I would claim to be a Christian, but my identity had everything to do with that business.
Mm.
It was something that I was wrapped up in, and when it went away, or there was a chance for it to go away, the way I like to say is it literally put me on my knees. And so I remember, because I was so lost, I opened up the Bible and started reading. And I realized that there were some things that I'm reading that this is not me, right? What I'm seeing here is somebody that places his faith in Christ and lives a way based on his identity in Christ. That's not me. And I remember calling my brother. Mike had come to faith a couple, 3 years earlier. And I told him, I said, I know this is translated. There's probably some additional meaning in here, right? And I still remember on the other end of the phone, he goes, Hank, it means what it says.
Mm.
And I told him, I said, I think I have a problem. And so it was a Thursday. I remember the day. It was a Thursday before Good Friday, because Mike was going to dress up as a pink bunny, and he had this story he would do to present the gospel in a pink bunny suit. And so we were at the costume store in the parking lot, and that's when I prayed a prayer, and I asked the Lord to save me. I recognized myself as a sinner, and asked the Lord to save me. And Mike and I cried together in the front seat of my old Jeep. Mm-hmm. But Ken, to your point, a big part of that had to be that I had to give up what it was that I was, had my identity in. And so I handed the business to the Lord, and I told him, I said, this is yours. I will steward it, and if you want to keep it, great, I'd love that. But if not, it's yours to do what you will. And that's how that happened. And there are some things that come out of that. I mean, for example, if this is the Lord's, then I need to make sure I understand how he wants business done. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that the Word of God, the Bible, has a lot to say about how we do business.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I bring it up in every company meeting, is because we, to a person, need to make sure that we are doing business in the right way.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. We're human. But even in a mistake, how are you going to react? Mm-hmm. Right? So it's really important that we as a business treat the business as not ours, and run it properly. And properly is defined by God, not me.
Yeah. And did you start to see, being a part of SectTech? So, my background, from 18 to 30, I was a pastor. And then I decided, to switch into software and follow a passion that I had for programming. I was really nervous, about, I'd only ever worked for faith-based organizations, and then, just coming on with SectTech. And one of the things I noticed right away about our culture is how giving and the amount of grace that's in our culture. There is a lot of grace for mistakes. And I was coming out of a boot camp. I went to a 4-month full stack boot camp, and here I am at this amazing consulting company that's doing really, really quality work. And it's just like, here you go, have fun. Let us know if you need anything. And just the level of trust, the level of freedom, and the level of grace in help. Even as a developer, I was never on an island. I mean, we have a culture where if you need a problem solved, there could be somebody working on another project, but ping them and we'll jump on calls together, because our culture is that we're here just to help solve the problem and to serve the customer. And because we have that mentality, we don't really worry about, oh man, I got to give 2 hours to some company I'm not going to get paid. There's just not any of this weird, energy or, territories or anything really within. I mean, it's just very giving and free. Did you see that culture, I guess, come, as a byproduct, I'm assuming, of, just as you began to change as a faith-based man, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still have pretty high expectations.
Yeah.
As you guys know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a grace in the face of acknowledging your mistake. Yeah. Not that we're not going to talk about the mistake.
Right, right. But the way I went about it before was probably, well, it wasn't probably. It was a lot different. Okay. Susie likes to say, the people at SectTech don't know pre-saved Hank. And
might be a good thing.
So it was, I was raised by a hard man, and he loved me tremendously, and he had high expectations because he wanted the most from me.
Yeah.
And just in general, that's how I like to operate as well. I think we should have high expectations.
Yeah.
Because we want the most out of people. However, there is a different way of doing it when the objective is you guys, right? If it's about me and I want these high expectations because it's about me, then all of a sudden, I mean, you can get angry, you can get petty, you can get, all of a sudden it's a very different focus. If it's about the other person and making sure that you equip them for those high expectations to be met, then all of a sudden it becomes a much different endeavor. That's the objective, and that's the culture that we have been able to cultivate there at SectTech. And I think it's great that you're here because we knew exactly what we were hiring when we hired you. We were hiring a junior developer.
Yeah.
But we have to, if we're going to hire junior developers, then let's don't act like they're senior developers. Let's give them little things to do. And when they screw up, then we will correct it and they'll learn, right? And then sooner or later become a developer and then a senior developer. And not everybody's like Kenn. Kenn shows up as a mechanical engineer and he's like, this breeze.
Yeah. Kenn, if you guys don't know, Kenn has a insane talent to very quickly pick up code, and it is very frustrating for his coworkers to watch.
It's it's not frustrating for me. I love it.
No, for his coworkers, it's fun to watch.
You guys are making me blush. All right, let's bring it back in. Another thing that you mentioned when you were talking about your three big things that change the world, basically increase productivity exponentially. The last thing you mentioned, AI, ML, which has been a big topic on this podcast, big topic all over the world. One thing I wanted to ask you about, especially with your experience going through the .com bust, do you see something like that happening to AI, ML? Because there's just so much money going into it right now. There's so much attention being paid to it right now. And I know you and I have had conversations before about how a lot of where the attention is maybe not where we think the highest value add for AI and ML is. Do you see something like that happen? And do you want to talk a little bit about your
I think it's only
experience?
natural. I think and what I've seen on every other time is people get really excited about the thing that, with the internet, it was the moving pictures or, whatever it was, and selling pet care online and so everybody spends crazy money. At the end of the day, you're going to have to figure out how to implement or how to use the technology at scale for a lot of people to solve big problems. Ultimately, there's going to have to be a bust, I think.
Yeah.
It's just natural.
Yeah.
And so there'll be some bust, and then it'll take a year or two. But I think Bill Gates was the one that said, the next $1 trillion company will be in AI. And I think he's right. And I'm not talking about NVIDIA either. I mean, Cisco was a great company to be to invest in during the internet boom because they provided all the glue that made the internet work. NVIDIA is that same sort of company. So if you're looking for a company to invest in that'll, no matter what, is the winner, it's companies like NVIDIA.
Yeah.
So I think actually it's companies like Apple as well. A lot of the Apple tech that's coming out has a lot of the AI ML in it, and they're not really touting it. But the amount of bandwidth that they're putting in their laptops right now to handle this is pretty tremendous. So
let me ask you this then, because I think a lot of businesses that we interact with that might be, watching the podcast, mid-level businesses, even smaller businesses are wondering, okay, a lot of my efficiency is online. I'm still, I've got a whole development team or consultancy team. We're working on web solutions. Do I keep working on web solutions, or do I start dumping all my money into investigating how AI is going to build my business? Should I completely pivot? I mean, I think a lot of people are just kind of wondering, like, how much should I really be allocating to investigating whether or not AI can help my business run more efficiently? What have you seen there, and what are your thoughts for?
Yeah, I think a conservative way is the best way.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're a manufacturing company or a sales company or whatever it may be. Invest in what you know works. Investigate those things you think may work, but to put all your chips on a gamble is a bad idea.
Mhm.
I think it'll be obvious. If it's anything like the other ones, there'll be an obvious point. And ChatGPT basically announced it. It was like the Mosaic browser.
Yeah.
It announced that the internet was here. The internet was here way before that, but the Mosaic browser made it available to everybody. ChatGPT is that. It made it available to everybody. It was like, oh wow, this stuff actually works. But there's going to be a product, a set of products, a category of technology. There's going to be something that comes out of this that is going to apply universally. And it's going to be, that's going to be the thing that people need to, but there are certain things, I will tell you that there are certain things that are being done right now by humans. It's the same way as what we just talked about.
Mhm.
If there are things that you have that have to be touched by 20 people, ask yourself, is that needed?
Yeah.
That's where all of these productivity gains come from. Is there something that is complicated? Could you ask yourself, could this be simplified?
Yeah.
You know, is there something that is hard to be repeated? Is there some way that you say, you know, could I use automation to make this repeatable?
Mm-hmm.
These are the huge productivity gains that are going to come for any business. And there's enough technology out today to answer yes to a lot of those types of questions.
That's amazing.
You know, we talked about even analyzing some products maybe that come back.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is a great example. Are there ways that we could take pictures of what it is that we're looking at,
Mm-hmm.
and then having that classified, classifying those things, and then trying to figure out what causes those, and so that you can address those things. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff you can automate. So.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think that, I mean, I think that kind of pairs a lot with what we've been talking about with AI and where all that's going. And I know we're probably running close to time, Hank. One last question I wanted to ask you was about, you know, with SectTech being around since 1999, not only has technology changed, but engineering in a lot of ways, software engineers have changed. I mean, at one point, I'm assuming you hired a lot of people who surely probably had computer science degrees or were coming out of some sort of cool school that taught them a lot about technology. As the internet rose, people started to figure out I can learn development a lot on my own. You know, a lot of resources started to come out. That led to boot camps, you know, that are coming out. And now you got a lot of engineers like ourselves who are coming out of a boot camp straight into being able to write code. How have you seen, you know, that barrier for entry into software change? And have you felt like, you know, engineers coming in today, though their paths are maybe different than they used to be, you know, are you seeing that there's still a level of quality there of the people coming in? I mean, how has that all changed for business?
I think engineers are about the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that it's any different. I'll also tell you that some of the best developers I've hired don't even have degrees.
Mm-hmm.
What I've found, I'll give you some commonalities. So what I've found is that guys that are very curious, that like to problem solve, work on cars, are good at working on cars, gearheads, that sort of thing. These are the types of people that tend to be good developers.
Yeah.
I'll also say that you can go to school, and I recommend you go to school because there's a lot of details about taking really large problems and making them smaller.
Yeah.
And there's some things that other people have already figured out. There's no reason for you to try to rediscover them. So I'm not saying there's no value in school. I think there's a great value in college degrees and that sort of thing. But I'll also tell you that I don't think you can go to school to be a great developer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I mean, it's going to sound weird, but I just think they're born.
Yeah.
And I've just found too many people that are this stuff just flows out of them, and then other people that it doesn't matter how much you help, it just doesn't work. And so those are the 20% on both sides,
Mm-hmm.
and then all the stuff in the middle, the 60% in the middle, is the guy that works his tail off and just uses the tools he's got, and he becomes a good craftsman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's your 80%. 20% is not going to matter what you do. They're just not going to get it.
Yeah.
20%, it doesn't matter if they even have a degree. They're going to be really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the stuff in the middle is going to be the guy that just is interested in it.
Yeah.
And really just is
Just
interested
works hard at it.
Just
Just
works
keeps
hard
knocking
at
on
it.
the door.
Knocking on the door.
Has that persistence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's understanding what's trying to get done.
Yeah.
He's not looping through and cut and pasting off the internet, right? He's understanding what's going on.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. I think that is a great point, and I think we are running out of time. I just want to say thank you so much, Hank, for joining us today. It was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
It's really great to have you on here and to talk about SectTech. And Matt, I'm so happy you're back. Congratulations
be back.
again. I'm so happy to have you here, back co-host with me. I really missed you, man, and I'm really just so happy for you.
I miss you too. Since I started working in SectTech, that might have been the longest gap I've gone since seeing you, Ken. It was sad. I knew something was getting off, and it was like I need to get
some
back.
Ken.
Yeah, man, need to get back to the super team. So no, man, it's great to be back, Hank. It was an amazing conversation. Really loved diving into. I feel like we could probably do a whole nother one.
Yeah,
I had so many
I think we
questions.
could
I was like, I could do
definitely
a
could.
whole nother one. So we'll have to have you back again soon.
Yeah.
We appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me. You guys are doing a great job. The quality of the podcast made me send an email and say, hey, I'd like to be on there.
That's
So,
awesome.
Good job.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back here in 2 short weeks with another guest. We'll see you then.